Erev Tov Rabbi Say. Last night we counted the 9th day of Siras Omer, which was Gvura Shebegora, and this evening, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we are arriving at the midah of Teferet Shebegora. Like we spoke about last week, the midah of Teferet is that of unity, of harmony, of rachamim, of emes. But specifically within the midah of Gvura, which is what we are working on this week, there is a incredibly important avoda of understanding in our relation between us and Hashem the Tiferes of the Ribbon Shalom, and through which we will be able to achieve a greater sense of Yiras Shamayim. What exactly does that mean? So the pasuk describes how Para, throughout the saga of the 10 Makos, was reticent to acknowledge, to accept, to admit that there was a creator of heaven and earth that was in charge of everything. That there was a strong being that he was up against, he agreed. That Moshe Rabbeinu could do some cool tricks, he agreed. But there is a moment which even Para breaks. Even Para breaks down and realizes, I am wrong here. And that's after Makas Barad. And the pasuk describes something interesting about Makas Barad, is that as opposed to all of the other Makos which had some kind of something that people had seen before. There was people had seen, lice, and people had seen blood, and people had seen wild. Makas Barad, the plague of hail, was different from anything that anybody else had seen ever before, because the pasuk says that Vayet Moshe es Mateo al Hashemayim v'Hashem nasan kalos uvarad. That Moshe sticks up his hand, and then there's these loud sounds, and there's this hail. V'tialach eish artso v'yamter Hashem barad al eretz Mitzrayim v'hi barad v'eish mislakachas b'seicha barad. Hashem is raining down this hail, which is fire and ice together. No one has ever seen that before. Now that, aside from being an astounding miracle, is also indicative of Midasat Tiferes. Tiferes is the unity of opposite things. The capacity to take two things that are completely disparate and to find a unity between them. And that can only be done by Konei Shamayim V'Aretz, by the Ribbon Shalom, creator of heaven and earth. Because Tiferes is that midah which sees a greater unity than the two disparate things that are in conflict with each other. And certainly in the ancient world, but even Bisman Hazeh, there are no two more fundamental, paradigmatic, elemental things than fire and water. These two things don't go together. And yet all of a sudden you have fire and water, they are working together. Vayishlach Para vayikra laMoshe uLaAaron vayomer alehem chatasi hapam. That moment, Para sends people to Moshe and Aaron and he says, I messed up. I failed. I've sinned. Hashem HaTzadik, Hashem is the Tzadik, Va'ani Va'ami HaRishaim, and me and my nation, we are the wicked ones. That, my difference, is called Yiras Shamayim. Meaning at that moment, even Para was massing something called Yiras Shamayim. Now, he goes back on that afterwards, because Yiras Shamayim is something that a person has to maintain. But in that moment, when Para saw these two disparate things, said that unity, that capacity for these two totally different things to exist, that induces a tremendous sense of Yiras Shamayim, that Hashem is in charge of everything. You can't deny it. You can't deny that. And that creates a moral calling within even Para. Hashem HaTzadik, Hashem is just, Hashem is righteous. Va'ani va'ami HaRishaim, and we're evil, we're wicked. Because if the thing that is in charge of everything, clearly in charge of everything, disagrees with me, then I'm wrong. That's the moment of Teferet Shebegora. Now we can experience this even without Makas Barad in our lives, because the truth is we experience a sense of unity and an invitation to awe, and to experiencing awesomeness, of Nora, of Yiras Shamayim, whenever we experience anything that has disparate ends to it. And we say this every day in davening, Yotzer Or Uvari Chashich. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu forms light. He creates darkness. Whenever we experience, whenever we witness the reality of a man and a woman being able to create a family, two people from two different places that think differently, that operate differently, and all of a sudden they've created something, that's called Midas HaTiferes. And when we experience that, when we witness that moment gives us a little bit of an understanding of there's something much bigger than all of this. And that induces Yiras Shamayim, where the infinite creator of heaven and earth has made it possible for disparate things to be able to be unified together. That's Manor HaMakom Hazeh. This is amazing. This is incredible. And there's a God that is much bigger than me that's in charge of this. That's called Teferes Shebegvura. Now, within the world of Teferes Shebegvura, that's Ben Adam L'Makam. Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, the avodah of Teferes Shebegvura, Gvura being inducing Yiras Shamayim, expressing Yiras Shamayim, educating Yiras Shamayim, like we spoke about yesterday, sometimes requires Gvura Shebegvura, where you have to be chazak, you have to be harsh with somebody. But the truth is, most of the time, it is most appropriate for a person, when necessary, to give Musar in a way that's called Teferes Shebegvura. Which means, and I'll say it in our language today, the thing that hurts people the most when you tell them that they're doing the wrong thing is not that you're correcting their behavior. That people are okay with. The number one thing that people get most upset about is that you embarrass them in doing so. Meaning, if you tell somebody quietly off to the side, I want you to know, the thing that you did wasn't so nice, or what you did was against Allah. And I'm sharing this with you because I think that you'd appreciate knowing that. So that's in the way of Tiferes. It means that you're giving them Gvura, but in a way that's very beautiful. That shows, I love you, but I have Yiras Shamayim. And these two things together creates a certain harmony where I'm going to share something with you, but you'll know that I'm doing it in a way that it's not going to hurt you. I'm doing it in a way that's beautiful. That's called Teferes Shebegvura. And you see this, by the way, that Nasan HaNavi comes to give Musar to David HaMelech. David HaMelech has just messed up with Bathsheba. Nasan HaNavi comes along to him and tells him a story. Tells him a story. Once upon a time there was a guy and he had a sheep, and then there was another guy and he came and he took the sheep. And he says, David, what do you think about the story? And David says, that guy that took the sheep is not a nice guy. He's a ben mavis. He should be executed. He should be put to death. And Nasan HaNavi goes, Hataish, you're that guy. He goes, oh my gosh. Now if Nasan HaNavi would have come along and said to him, by the way, you're an oisvav, low life, good for nothing, so David HaMelech probably would have been less receptive to that Musar. Meaning, part of the reason that David HaMelech has the success that he does in doing tshuva is because his error was pointed out to him in a way of Tiferes. And sometimes we feel the desire to give it to the guy over the head in the way of Gvura, and they know it, that it's not coming from a place of Ava, and it's not even coming from a place of Yiras Shamayim. It's coming from a place of, I want to make me look better than you. And if I want to make me look better than you, then it's non-receptive. Nobody's interested in that kind of Musar. Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, to give Musar when necessary, when appropriate, when it will be successful, like we mentioned yesterday, only if it will be successful, but even when you know that it's important and it needs to be done, it needs to be done. B'derech HaTiferes. It needs to be done in a way that is beautiful. And the final point that I'll make, which is important to know, Ben Adam La'atzmo, Teferes Shebegvura means when we are doing things that are Yiras Shamayim oriented, or what we might say in our vernacular, frum. So there's frum that makes other people cringe, and then there's frum that makes other people say, wow, that's beautiful. Teferes Shebegvura means through the beautiful acts that I do, other people are inspired by the Yiras Shamayim. Other people are inspired to see a sense of discipline. Other people are inspired to see, that's the way that a Jew behaves. A Jew that has Tiferes has self-control. The frumkats that we have, which sometimes are important, and sometimes are necessary, and sometimes are meaningful, not always. But those things need to be done in a way that display a sense of Tiferes, a sense of unity, a sense of harmony, a sense of rachamim, a sense of emes, a sense of disparate parts being put together, and then it leads to an appropriate sense of gvura and Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, to be continued tomorrow.